Hello, and welcome to another episode of eBay Scavengers. I'm Mikey, and today Jay and I are going to be discussing negative feedback. How can we avoid negative feedback? This is episode 48. And Jay, how did we get on this topic? Was this someone writing you, asking about this?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of touched on this before, I think, in the very early days of this podcast, but I thought we could really do a more kind of comprehensive podcast about this. I have had a woman email us. I forgot her name, but she sounded new and sounded like she had a bad experience with a buyer, and now she's freaking out because, you know, if you're pretty new and you don't have a lot of feedback and someone gives you negative feedback, it kind of like puts into its question why you're even doing eBay. So I thought the two of us, since we both have pretty good, ratings, we could just kind of talk about what we do to avoid bad feedback.
Right. Well, I know in my early days, I certainly struggled with bad feedback, and I think it was mostly because I would look at an item and I would talk it up, be like, look how great this is, and look at this and that, and, doing this hard sale in the description field.
Yeah.
And that's not the way to do it. I think I think it's better almost to talk it down and be like, there's pilling on this sweater and there's a coffee stain on the butt. There's
it is amazing what people will buy, and that's the number one thing that new people need to know is you got to list honestly with lots of pictures, full disclosure of all problems. Like if you leave anything out and they complain, it's all your fault. Period.
Now, when I look at my feedback, sometimes I laugh because people are describing the item they've received. So in my positive feedback, they'll say, item was extremely well described. And I think they're not saying that because it's a great item. They're saying that because I covered my butt so well they couldn't return it without paying shipping fees.
Right. And we've had that too, where people will give us good feedback, but in the good feedback, they'll say, item had a lot of holes, but everything had been shown in pictures. So there you go.
Jay, what would be your advice to someone who's just getting started with eBay and they're getting negative feedback? Like what kind of things should they be doing besides honestly listing with great detail?
I mean, the other thing is when buyers write to us, we always answer promptly, So I don't know, as when we buy on eBay, we'll often ask a lot of questions, and it's amazing. Sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 days for the person to get back to us. It's insane. So I think opening up that line of communication is really important. How about you?
Well, when you have that immediate response, and I feel like the situation is completely diffused, as upset as the buyer may be with what they received, or as interested as the buyer may be in purchasing an item, like you have just taken care of it by having a response within a few minutes.
Yep. And most people will actually even say when they write back, I can't believe how fast you wrote back to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that just says a lot about maybe the standard on eBay of how fast people write back to buyers.
I mean, it seems like a lot of it, is centered around communication. If you're prompt, if you're honest with your communication and really set the buyer's expectation, what can go wrong at that point?
Right. I think the other thing is, we are talking about, taking pictures of things with holes in them and marks and all that. But at the same time, I think as we've learned, we don't really buy that stuff as much anymore to sell. We really try and pass over things that have a lot of problems. And I think that's something too, as a new seller, that try maybe to avoid things that are going to cause problems. Because, I always try and pick something up and like, if I'm like, if I got this, I probably wouldn't like it, or it's a little too bad, then I just don't buy it these days,
I feel like when I am walking through a yard sale or through a thrift store, that when I pick up items, I briefly try to visualize what it would look like sitting at my laptop and listing this item. Right. Like if I pick up a shoe, I'm like, well, where's the shoe size? Because if there's no shoe size, it's going to be hard to list.
Exactly. Yeah, we do not buy shoes that don't have a shoe size clearly labeled on them. So
that's just looking for a fight with the buyer, because you can make up all the stuff about it, but it's trouble. Well, I'll just add one thing. I also don't like listing items that are really hard for me to list, because I'll get a big pile of queued up items. Like right now I have a bunch of slides that I do not want to list because I got to go through the slides and pick out the good ones and list them, and I'm just not into that right now. So it's holding my eBay queue up. So I have all these items that I should be listing in my store, but these slides are in the way.
Yeah. I mean, we do the same thing where we will start to pass up things that are too dirty. Things that we know we could clean up, like it's machines or, coffee grinders, but we're just like, yeah, it's going to be too much trouble to clean it up, And that's something I do is that we personally, we clean everything the way we would want it to be at the end of the day. So we don't send people things that are dusty and dirty so they can clean it, because I just think that would make them angry.
I gotcha. So I want to just add in something in here that I noticed from your notes on the show is refunds. I feel like as an early eBayer, I was really reluctant to give refunds. Yep. I would go back and forth with the buyer, figuring out how they could keep that item.
Yep.
And it's probably good, as you say, to be refund is the default.
I mean, I think it's probably be tough if a new person's hearing this and they're maybe selling 3 things a week or something. I mean, if you have to do a refund, I mean, that's a huge hit, So I can understand why people are afraid to do that. But man, that's something we just learned. If someone complains, send it back, a refund, no problem, and just keep on going, because that whole mental energy spent worrying about it is just not worth it.
Yeah. Now, how often would you say that you get negative feedback at this point?
Man, we've talked about this. It's weird. It comes in waves. We've been doing great the past couple months, 2, 3 months, but then we'll hit a month where we'll get 2 negative feedbacks and some neutral feedback. I always get worried around it's Christmas time, because I just find that it's people buying on eBay that normally aren't buying on eBay, but they're doing it because it's the holidays, and they just don't understand that a neutral and negative feedback is it's a really bad thing, and they just think it's a Yelp thing or something. I don't know.
I almost forgot to go into this, but we're going to have to go into this now, and that is bad buyers, bad sellers.
Yep.
That a buyer has a profile to them that they're going to be trouble. Why don't we talk about what a bad buyer looks like from the get-go?
Right. I mean, so that's the other thing. If you're a new seller, do not be afraid to take charge of your store. So if I get a buyer that starts writing me right off the bat really long emails, I normally block them right away, normal people don't start telling me stories about their family and all this stuff, blocked.
I think along with those long emails is inappropriate wording. If they come in and they're controversial, they could send you a short email, but it's controversial. I'm going to buy this, but your price is terrible.
Right. Or people that ask for way too much. The deal just gets too complicated. I'm going to buy it, but I'm going to pay you on the 6th of next month, and it's going to be a postal money order. Is that okay? And we just be like, no, because those people seem to always get the item, and then they mail it back, and they just wasted 2 months of our life, on this item.
That's interesting. Yeah. So alternative payment, that can be a sign of trouble. I've noticed that too. When people want to do credit cards and stuff, I've done it, but I find a lot of those transactions don't hold. We end up having to do a return later. Right. What about countries? Not to promote stereotypes, but are there any countries that you're like, oh no, not Greece?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. No, I mean honestly, we have more trouble with Americans than anybody. Americans seem and I'm an American too, so we are just very bossy people, and we want what we want when we want it. I love selling to Europe, Australia, England. I mean, they're all great. Brazil. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some country issues, but I really do have specific countries that I'm more concerned with.
Like what? Like who?
But it's more, well, okay, for example, the Russian postal system
Yep.
with priority, I've had good results, but shipping stuff first class is really slow, hit or miss. And I find like all of the like Ukraine area postal stuff it's really shady unless it's priority.
Yeah, see, we've had actually excellent experiences with all those, it's Russian-like areas. We've had good feedback, but again, I don't know if I have enough numbers to really be able to make a good qualification on that.
Yeah, well, I feel like if stuff is getting delivered in a 2 to 3 week window, it's great. It almost doesn't matter what country, but as soon as you start messing with first class using the super cheap international postage, trouble comes up, and there's not enough tracking normally that you can point at anything. And I've kind of like gotten to the point where there's very few items I'll ship first class international because I just don't want to have to do a refund for the postage and the item.
Yep. No, totally hear you. Now I'm gonna kind of change topics a little bit or move this on. Now, I think it's very important if you're new, if you get negative feedback, to not dwell on it and just keep a listing. Do a refund or whatever the person wants, then just get back into it, your store, and list. I have a guy down the street who actually sells on eBay. He's one of those guys, he's kind of like an older guy, and he hangs out at the flea markets, and I was really surprised when he told me he was doing eBay because I didn't even know he knew how to do a computer, but he did. And he told me that he sold something to a person in Texas. Like, he said that he had full tracking. It said it got to the person, but then eBay took the person's side because it got lost, and he just quit eBay. He said, I just deleted my store, I deleted my profile, I'm done with it. And I'm just like... That's ridiculous, Like, that's.
Right.
I mean, he's not teaching anyone a lesson doing that, And plus, his story doesn't even sound true. So I don't know. It's just, I think I read those kind of stories. If you do not do this if you haven't already. Don't go on the eBay community boards. It's just full of frustrated, angry people who just want to like rage about eBay. It's just like such a waste of time,
Oh, they just whine and whine. I know what you mean. I stay away from those. But whenever you search for certain eBay topics, that's what comes back.
Yep.
So I want to ask you about your neutral feedback you guys had removed.
Sure.
You might have covered this your last episode too, but that's worth mentioning here. If you're getting negative or neutral feedback, you can actually call eBay, and they have a whole new policy now.
Yeah. So every a fall and spring, eBay does these brand new things where they kind of change their policies or they tighten things up. So this fall has been feedback. So if you get neutral or negative feedback, and in the description, if the buyer said, I bought this and the item was scratched, and if your description says the item's scratched, they will take that feedback off. And that happened to us. It's this past week. So that reinforces the idea you need to take photos and be very honest in your listing, because eBay will now back you up.
As well as you need to call eBay whenever there's an issue like this and try to work it out with eBay, showing them that, hey, you're a power seller, you move a lot of stuff, this is not not an issue on your side.
I mean, that's the other thing. Like, I don't know about you, but we have overall positive experiences calling eBay. They will look at our store, they look at our feedback. As long as we aren't crazy and yelling at them, they'll normally help us out. And if by chance we get that one customer service person that doesn't seem interested, we just hang up and call back and get somebody else, because they're probably in a room of 300 people,
Right. Yeah, I've had good experiences both with eBay and PayPal, that if you call them and you have a legitimate case, they will work with you and often resolve it on the spot. But what I like about your recent story is now the neutral feedback that you had changed around the scratch is that eBay is adjusting the DSRs now too, which I think in the past that was totally locked down. So the DSRs are the 5-star rating system.
Right.
The detailed seller review.
Right. I mean, and for new people, they have to understand, like, eBay had this weird thing where people give you a star. They'll give you, a negative or neutral or positive feedback, but then they can give you these stars, and the star ratings are based on shipping, communications, item as described, and those are anonymous. So you can get these low star ratings and have no idea who it's from. It's very weird why eBay does that, but there
Well,
it is.
in the past, though, we both had this happen where someone accidentally gave us
Right.
a low detailed seller rating, and
Right.
eBay couldn't change it.
Right.
Even if the buyer wrote into eBay and said, "I'm sorry, I meant to give this person 5 stars, but I click 1 star and submit."
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's
now they can't change it.
right. But I think that's the other thing that, again, people need to understand. So if you get some negative star ratings or a low star ratings, the best thing to do is just to keep selling and dilute it. So we sell 300 things in a month. So if we get a negative rating on something, I mean, it's a wash. It's really not that big of a deal. So if you're a seller that's only selling 3 things a month and you get a negative, yeah, that's some serious stuff. I mean, that's a big hit,
Absolutely. So, Jay, you're going on vacation. You're going to do you're going to do a 6-week. I'm doing a 2-week. We're both going to leave our stores open. What would be your tips to someone who's doing vacation to avoid negative feedback? Now, I know you have things like being clear that you're on vacation and contacting the seller. Are you going to do anything different for 6 weeks?
No, I mean, well, it's kind of hard. I can't imagine what else to do, but I think a good rule of thumb is you cannot communicate too much, and you can't over communicate with people. So we always send an email when someone buys something. I mean, maybe what we'll do is we'll send, an email halfway through our trip, and it'll let people know that we're gone. And then always when we come back from vacation too, when we ship an item, eBay will automatically send them info of their package, but we also send them a message on top of that and tell them we just shipped this. Thank you for, being so patient. It's on its way. Here's a number of the package. And so far, everything's gotten to people. It's a week afterwards, and it's no bad comments or feedback. It's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So, Jay, you forwarded me an article about 15,000 sellers being deleted off eBay.
Right. Well,
what's going on?
I don't think they were deleted. Their stores, they were suspended from putting up its new items, and that goes along with the fall update. So I guess eBay is trying to crack down on people with a low star ratings or a negative feedback. If you do have a negative feedback, I think it's like 4.6 or something, eBay starts to crack down. They put the brakes on you. They call it the guardrail program. Where they slow people down, so they have to start, they send you like a form email where it tells you, start thinking about free shipping or communicate better with people or to describe things, it's better.
It's a significant change on their part to take 15,000 people and kind of put their store in suspension mode. So.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know how big of a number that is compared to the total number of sellers. It could be there could be, I don't know how many people sell on eBay, a couple of a million people? I don't know. So.
Yeah, I saw a stat a while back, but it was an enormous number. It's like a third of the U.S. uses eBay in some form.
Wow.
It's really staggering.
I mean, and I think that's a good segue to what I wanted to talk about. If you're a seller on eBay and you're like really angry at them and you love calling them Feebay and all that stuff, I mean, just go somewhere else. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. It's a big wide open web. But I think we have to admit though that for people like us that are scavengers, where we're picking up stuff off the streets and in yard sales and selling them, eBay is really the game in town, because Etsy is too low of a volume to really make a living on there. Craigslist is like way too flaky, in my opinion, trying to make sales there. Flea markets, there's not enough high enough profit margin to like load up at your car and stand in a flea market. Amazon, they really don't let you sell the kind of stuff that we sell, like scavenged antiques. And if you try and build your own online store, I mean, that's just like way too much work for the volume that is needed, in my opinion, to make a living. So I just say make peace with eBay and just do with it what you will, you know?
Yeah, I have to say, as a seller on eBay, every month or every few months, I just find that they're getting better and better at supporting their sellers. It's not going backwards; it's going forwards. You know, their policies have been really good, and really that you can get, you know, neutral and negative feedback removed this easily now.
Yeah,
it's a big change.
I mean, I don't know if I'm going to make anyone angry when they hear this, but I just think if you're like a person who's using eBay and you're just like having such arguments and fighting with them so much that they're suspending you, or you're actually thinking of quitting eBay, I just think maybe you have some issues in your own life. Like, you know, it can't just be eBay. It must be like arguments with the guy at the grocery store, and the car dealer is a bad guy, and your mom's a bad person. You know, I don't know.
Yeah. There's bigger problems, and it's probably not even their fault. Just misdirected anger.
I do have a couple other things too, because this is something that, you know, we've had to learn. Don't sell like fake items. So, you know, you can't. That's the quickest way for eBay to put you in violation. That's trying to sell like fake, you know, it's fashion shoes and purses and stuff like that. Don't do that.
Yeah, I totally understand. I mean, there was a while I was into selling empty boxes on eBay.
Right.
And, you know, eBay is not on the empty box tip at all.
Right. You know,
they'll flag it.
Yeah, and like you can't sell some kind of a military stuff. So if you're doing that, they have a whole page that tells you stuff that you can and cannot sell. Because basically, they don't want a terrorist or some, you know, angry person to buy a military-grade items that they can then go and kill people with. A medical stuff, too, you got to be careful about that, you know?
Yep. I often don't pick up anything that looks like medical enough that eBay would flag it.
Right.
And it's kind of surprising how wide that net is for eBay. They're very sensitive to anything that could be used in a life or death situation. They don't want it to come down to that medical device that was purchased on eBay. I
didn't even think about that. Someone like buys like a ventilator or something, or like a thing to restart their heart or something like that.
And those items are tempting because when they do sell, because eBay doesn't catch everything, they sell for high dollar.
Now, and the last thing I have on my list is about shipping. So if you're having problems with, you know, people not getting things, or they're angry about shipping, you can do free shipping, then put that cost into the price, and then eBay gives you an automatic 5-star if you ship for free. I don't like free shipping, but I guess if someone's having problems with their shipping, that's one thing to do.
Yeah. No, I don't use free either. I don't like it for the same reasons. I don't feel like it really does me any favors. But I would say that an easy way for people who have been struggling with bad feedback, get your stuff out fast.
Yeah.
Fast shipping
oh my God.
is something people always note that in your positive feedback. Can't believe how fast this item got there.
Always ship when you say you're going to ship. Like Ryan's had some problems recently where she'll buy things on eBay, and what they'll do is they'll print the label out, so we'll get an email with the code, and then we notice that it doesn't move. It sits in the person's house for 2 days, and then they mail it, and that's kind of annoying.
Right. Well, they're gaming the system there to some degree, because now they won't be penalized by eBay for shipping late.
Right.
And you know, the only person who takes the hit is the buyer.
Yeah. I never understand those sellers that are like, I only ship on Fridays. I guess it's those people that still handwrite everything, and they have to like load everything up in the car and like get it out of the trunk. I mean, what a pain in the ass, you know?
They could be remote too and just come in to their post office. I don't know. It's crazy. To me, you should just ship every day.
Yeah.
You know, I ship, 6 days a week, just like the post office picks up.
Yep. Cool.
Is there any other tips you have here, Jay, for...
That's all I got. Just make some money. It's so easy, you know? Find it.
Yeah, I like to act like eBay is listening in on the conversations, because when you have a serious buyer-seller problem, that's what it's going to come down to, is eBay's going to look at the notes that you're sending back and forth and do not send messages to the buyer outside of eBay.
Yeah.
Now, keep it all...
Now,
Go ahead.
I know, I think that's a very good point that we should maybe end on. I mean, we have had problems with it's buyers, and you have to escalate it, and it's just, there's nothing that you can do about it. But eBay does read all those messages, and oftentimes eBay will take our side because we're always really professional in our messages. We don't curse, we don't bully people, we aren't acting like we're on a street corner, like being personally offended. We act like it's a business transaction, and we try to always be the better its person. And eBay really does see that, and they will. And I know they've helped us when that has happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing for eBay to say against you when the seller is telling the customer, please return this for a full refund. Right? At that point, it's really like there's nothing to have contention over. All you have to do is return it for a refund. There's no who's right and wrong.
Right. And if you're dealing it's with a buyer who's like yelling at you, who's calling you a thief, and they're personally attacking you.
You had that?
Yeah. I mean, we've had that where a buyer will say that we're trying to rip them off, that it's a scam, that kind of thing.
Oh.
And,
wow.
And eBay sees like, whoa, this person's unhinged, like there's a problem. So
yeah, I haven't had an accusation on that level, but I've certainly had issues where I've shipped more technical things and people don't know how to use them.
Right.
And I take a negative feedback hit because they say it doesn't work, but it does. All right, so now everyone knows how to avoid negative feedback.
That's right. And please go to the blog ebayscavengers.com and leave a comment about maybe a bad buyer that you've had to handle or deal with. I love hearing those kind of stories.
Yeah, those are fun stories. So that is episode number 48 of eBay Scavengers, Avoiding Negative Feedback. All right, I'll talk to you later, Jay.
See you, bye.